There have been many stories told of phantom ships along the sea, and ships that disappear. However, you may think that all these stories are fake. But what if I tell you that one of those stories is true, but has been almost completely forgotten? This is a story, the real story, of one of the most creepiest and haunting ships that ever sailed the seas. This is a true story. This is the story of a Russian freighter that was just built to serve her country, but was destroyed for reasons we still can't figure out. The ship's name was Ivan Vassili, and you may all think that this is not true, but I have proof that this ship was real. This is the only known photo of the SS Ivan Vassili. Now you may all think she's just a regular ship. A ship with a disturbing past. This is the legend of the Ivan Vassili. Now, there wasn't anything jinxed or unusual about this ship. Ivan Vassili was built in 1897 in Russia to carry cargo to the Baltic Sea to the Gulf of Finland, and her coal bunkers had enough coal to let her sail up to 2,500 miles at a speed of 8 knots. So relatively, she was a slow ship. However, she proved to be very reliable. Her superstructure and decks were completely made out of wood, and her hull was of iron construction. She was powered by one single expansion triple engine. For 5 years, Ivan Vassili served her country very well. She proved to be a very sturdy and reliable ship. However, 5 years into her career, things would take a turn for the worst, and this ship will become a sailor's home to a sailor's worst nightmare. In 1903, the Russian government was preparing to set to war against Japan, and so they needed a lot of freighters to give supplies to their warships. Ivan Vassili was one of those ships. So, in 1943, she was sent to Cape Town to receive a huge stockpile of coal to give to Russian warships. However, as they were stocking up the ship for the long voyage ahead, the crew of Ivan Vassili began to feel a little weird, as if something had changed about the ship. Many of them say that it didn't seem the same as being on a ship. The ship seemed a bit eerie, as if someone was watching them. But still, everything went as usual, and when she was stocked up, the SS Ivan Vassili set out into the Indian Ocean. Knowing her speed was 8 knots, it would take them if a week, to get to the destination to the warships. However, throughout the journey, the crew kept having that feeling that something was very wrong, as if an invisible entity was on board, if someone was watching them. Still, they went around with their usual business, but still, they couldn't stop wondering if the ship was alone or not. The whole area seemed very negative. Then, one night, things would take a change. One night, one of the crew members who was on duty that night claimed to have seen an apparition glowing in a mysterious, odd mist. It walked normally and disappeared behind a lifeboat. Now, this eyewitness said that this overall mist apparition looked humanoid. However, he couldn't make out any specific features. But there was no saying, or no doubt, there was a ghost on Ivan Vassili, but things would get much and much worse. A couple nights later, a crew member let out a horrifying, eerie scream
and all of a sudden, the crew members began to fight each other, trying to kill each other, fighting each other, you know it. It's unknown what actually caused all this, but all of a sudden, the Ivan Vassili turned from a ship of peace to a ship of utter hell.
The wild melee resumed for God knows how long. The crew members were still fighting each other. In fact, they said they didn't even know what the heck they were doing. They were just fighting each other. It all ended when Alex Glavinsky threw himself overboard into the murky waves to his ultimate death. After that, it seemed to have stopped. The crew members looked at each other and wondered, what were we doing? Why were we fighting each other? The next day, the ship entered port. The crew members were very, very scared. For a couple of days, everything seemed to resume as normal on board Ivan Vassili. However, 2 days later, things would happen again. 3 days after the initial attack, the men went into another screaming, hysterical, utterly rampage. They were fighting each other yet again. A few minutes later, they collapsed, wondering yet again what were they doing and why were they fighting each other. However, the fate of Alex Sklavinsky had been repeated, as they soon figured out another crew member had also committed suicide by jumping off the deck. Seems strange, don't you think, of how 2 nights on one ship, all hell would break loose. When the ship finally reached Vladivostok, 12 crew members abandoned ship, unable to take the strain of being such a harmful ship. Many others attempted to escape through the ship's hatches. However, they were all rounded up like cattle, and they were taken back to the ship, under extreme armed surveillance. The anxiety was very high as the cargo was unloaded from Ivan Vassili, but still, the ship was still kept in service, and set sailed on another voyage to Hong Kong. A couple of nights into the trip to Hong Kong, all hell broke loose yet again, and everyone went into a complete frenzy of utter mayhem. It all ended when a stoker died. He didn't kill himself though. It is said that he died of simple fear. Fear. Did this have something to do with the spirit that was seen on Ivan Vassili? A couple of nights later, the same thing happened again. The crew fell into another screaming, hysterical rampage, and another crew member himself was killed. Now, I guess you're all thinking right now, it's a pattern. Every time Vassili is out at sea, her crew goes into a phantom rampage, almost killing each other, and then a crew member ends up dying. It's as if something has cursed the Ivan Vassili. Finally, the ship reached Hong Kong. Things only got worse, however, when just as the ship reached port, Captain Sven Andrist went overboard and killed himself by drowning. The own captain of the Ivan Vassili had killed himself. This was the last straw for the crew members. They all deserted the Ivan Vassili and refused to go back on the ship. Chris Hansen, who was the second officer, and 5 Scandinavian seamen were the only ones who were able to stay on Ivan Vassili. Still, they couldn't just have 6 members owning one big ship. It didn't take long for the government to find another crew and captain for the Ivan Vassili, and she set out yet again, this time for Sydney, Australia. And who was the new captain? Well, it was the second officer who had stayed aboard the ship, Chris Hansen. However, the voyage was going great. However, the day before the day before Ivan Vassili reached Sydney, Captain Hansen, formerly second officer and one of the few men to stay aboard Ivan Vassili, took out his revolver and shot himself. The same thing happened. The crew were too scared to go back on the ship, and they all abandoned it, all except boatswain Harry Nelson. For 4 months, the ship was stranded at Sydney. while Nelson tried to find a captain and a new crew, one that was skeptical and didn't believe all this. However, he was saddened to find out that nearly every single Russian soldier had heard about the stories and didn't want to sail on the Ivan Vassili, which she had a nickname now, the Death Ship. 4 months after the whole Sydney incident, a new crew was assigned. This crew was skeptical and didn't believe of all the stories, and so the ship set sail yet again, this time to San Francisco, California. For a week, everything went fine, but a week into the voyage, all hell broke loose yet again, and the crew started fighting each other. 2 of the men were found to be possessed beyond repair and were entirely violent. The skeptical captain had them chained below deck. The next day, they were dead. That same night, the one skeptical captain took his revolver and shot himself. He became the second captain on the Ivan Vassili to shoot himself. This was the final straw, and Nelson and his crew turned the ship back to Russia. However, they would receive rewards for returning the ship back to Russia. However, nothing could be done to get them back on the ship. Every single crew member did not want to be on that ship. And even any sailors or dockmen didn't even want to be close to her. And so, for several years, the diabolical Ivan Vassili remained vacant in the Russian harbor of Vladivostok. Then, the sailors of the port decided they had to get rid of the Death Ship. And so, in 1907, those who once worked on the Ivan Vassili came aboard and set the ship alight. In small boats, they cheered as the once evil ship became devoured by flames. The ship burned all night long. The crew sang songs and even drank beers as they watched what was once the most evilest ship on earth become devoured by the flames. By the next day, she was still smoldering. She then capsized, and the Ivan Vassili sank beneath the waves. However, people do swear that as the ship went down, they heard a scream coming from within the ship, and that scream didn't sound human. Hopefully, the fire did send the entity away from the ship, but still, what caused this ship to be evil in the first place? The first ever sign was that the crew member saw an apparition. It looked humanoid but didn't have any features. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What possessed the Ivan Vassili and what made her the Death Ship? If you ask me, this is probably the most deadliest story I've ever heard of. And I'm sorry to say, this story is 100% true. And this is the only known photo of the Ivan Vassili. Please guys, let me know down in the comments. What do you think caused this ship to become so evil? And why did the crew turn on each other and several men kill themselves? However, it's still unknown who caused the deaths of two of those men who were possessed beyond repair. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Now, I will do other videos of ghost ships, but this ship is among the worst and the most terrifying I've ever heard of. So, I sent you off with this message. When you're out at sea, please be careful and make sure you do not have an entity on a ship. An entity that once possessed the Ivan Vassili. Still, the wreck of the Ivan Vassili has not been found to this very day. I hope it is found soon, too, so we can finally understand what really happened. And I want to give you guys a little challenge. If you guys can make a video of your description of the Ivan Vassili based on this picture, like a drawing or a model, please let me know. Please send me a link to the comments, and I'll take a look at it.
If so, it will appear in a video related to the Ivan Vassili. That all. Thank you for watching the ghost story of the true story, the 100% true story of the SS Ivan Vassili.